He cut her brake line as a prank, then googled how. That doesn't add up. Why?
The brake pedal slammed to the floor and nothing happened. I was still moving straight toward the intersection. I'm Lena, 24, gripping my steering wheel so hard my hands were shaking halfway down my own street just minutes after leaving my driveway. My brother Evan had been laughing when I pulled out. Relax, it's just a prank, he said after crawling under my car with a toolbox. Now my car wouldn't stop, and everyone kept telling me I was overreacting. The next morning at the shop, the mechanic lifted my car, took one look underneath, and immediately backed away like he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to. He didn't explain. He just pulled out his phone, dialed 911, and said, "Yeah, you need to get someone here right now." Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The brake pedal slammed to the floor and nothing happened. I was still moving straight toward the intersection. I'm Lena, 24, gripping my steering wheel so hard my hands were shaking halfway down my own street just minutes after leaving my driveway. My brother Evan had been laughing when I pulled out. Relax, it's just a prank, he said after crawling under my car with a toolbox. Now my car wouldn't stop, and everyone kept telling me I was overreacting. The next morning at the shop, the mechanic lifted my car, took one look underneath, and immediately backed away like he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to. He didn't explain. He just pulled out his phone, dialed 911, and said, "Yeah, you need to get someone here right now." I stood there, frozen just outside the open garage bay, the smell of oil and rubber hanging in the air. My car was still raised above me, tilted slightly, its undercarriage exposed like something vulnerable. The mechanic wouldn't look at me anymore. He just kept pacing in small circles, one hand pressed to the back of his neck. "What is it?" I asked, stepping closer. "What did you see?" He didn't answer. Another guy in the shop walked over, glanced underneath, then immediately looked away like he didn't want to be involved. My chest tightened. Is it the brakes? They just stopped working yesterday. My brother said it was a prank, but the mechanic cut me off, voice low. "Ma'am, I need you to step outside the bay." That word times landed wrong. Not should, not might want to, need. I took a step back, my eyes still fixed on the car. Just hours ago, I had been behind that wheel, trusting it, trusting him. "Is it dangerous?" I asked. He finally looked at me then, not confused, not unsure, certain. Before he could answer, a distant siren started to grow louder. The siren didn't fade, it got louder, sharper, until it cut straight through the open garage. I stood just outside the bay, arms wrapped around myself, watching the mechanic wipe his hands on a rag that wasn't even dirty anymore. He kept glancing at my car, then back toward the street like he was waiting for backup, not customers. A police cruiser pulled in fast, tires crunching over gravel. My stomach dropped. One officer stepped out, scanning the lot, then walked straight toward me. "Are you the owner of the silver sedan?" "Yeah," I said, my voice thinner than I expected. "What's going on?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked up toward the lifted car, then back to me. "Did anyone else have access to your vehicle recently?" The question felt heavier than it should have. I hesitated. "My brother," I said finally. "This morning. He said he pulled a prank." The mechanic let out a quiet breath behind me, like that confirmed something he didn't want to be right about. "What kind of prank?" the officer asked. "I don't know," I admitted. He was under the car for a minute, had tools. I thought maybe he loosened something small like a joke, but then yesterday my brakes just stopped working. The officer's expression didn't change, but something in his posture did more alert now, more focused. "Can you walk me through exactly what happened when you tried to stop?" I swallowed. The pedal went all the way down, no resistance, nothing. Behind him, the mechanic shifted. I caught a glimpse of another employee standing near the lift, arms crossed tight, staring at the exposed underside of my car like it might collapse just from being looked at. Is it just worn out? I asked, even though it didn't feel like that, like a leak or something. The mechanic shook his head slowly, but didn't speak. My phone buzzed in my hand. Evan. I stared at his name lighting up the screen, my pulse ticking up again. I declined it. A second later, a text came through. Evan, you're seriously still on this? It was nothing. Nothing. I turned the screen toward the officer without saying a word. He read it, then handed it back to me. Ma'am, he said carefully, we're going to need a little more information about your brother. I felt something shift inside my chest, not panic this time, something colder. Why? I asked. Before he could answer, the mechanic finally spoke, his voice low but firm. Because that's not wear and tear, he said, nodding toward my car. That was done. I stared at him. Done? How? He held my gaze for a second, then looked at the officer instead. And the officer said, flat and direct, your brake line's been cut. Cut? The word didn't land right. It just hung there, like it belonged to a different situation, someone else's story. What do you mean cut? I asked, looking between the officer and the mechanic. Like, damaged? The mechanic shook his head, slow and certain. No, not damaged. Clean. Straight through. My stomach dropped again, but this time it didn't stop. That's not something that just happens, the officer added, watching me closely. It requires intention. I felt my grip tighten around my phone. No, he wouldn't. Evan wouldn't. The words trailed off before I could even finish them. Not because I believed it, but because I suddenly wasn't sure. The officer glanced toward his partner, then back at me. You said he was under the vehicle with tools? Yes, but he said it was a prank. He was laughing. He told me to relax. Did he say what he did specifically? No. My voice dropped. Just that. The mechanic stepped closer, lowering his voice like he didn't want it echoing across the shop. Ma'am, I've seen people mess with cars before, loosen a tire, pull a fuse, stupid stuff. This wasn't that. I looked up at the underside of my car again. It didn't look dangerous. It didn't look like something that could have killed me 10 minutes from home, but it had... My phone buzzed again. Evan calling. The officer nodded toward it. Go ahead, put it on speaker. I hesitated, then answered. What? Evan's voice came through, sharp, already irritated. Why are you ignoring me? There are cops here, I said, my throat tightening. At the shop. There was a pause too long to be casual. Why? He asked. The officer stepped closer. This is Officer Reyes. We're looking into your sister's vehicle. We need to ask you a few questions. Another pause. Then Evan's tone shifted, less annoyed, more controlled. What is this about? He asked. I didn't do anything serious. She's blowing it out of proportion like always. The words hit harder this time. The officer didn't react. Did you or did you not access the underside of the vehicle this morning? I mean, yeah, for like a second, Evan said. It was a joke. That's it. A joke involving tools? Silence. I could hear his breathing now, not laughing, not amused. Then he said it. It wasn't supposed to go that far. Everything in my body went still. The officer's expression changed instantly. Go that far how? Evan didn't answer. Evan? I said, my voice barely holding steady. What did you do? Another silence, then the line went dead. The call ended. No explanation. No denial. Just gone. The officer lowered his hand slowly. We're going to need him to come in, he said. And for the first time, I wasn't thinking about the car anymore. I was thinking about the way Evan had been standing in the driveway watching me drive away. Not laughing, just watching. My phone felt heavier in my hand after the call dropped. He hung up, I said, even though they'd heard it. Officer Reyes was already stepping away, speaking quietly into his radio. I caught fragments, times, possible tampering, suspect admitted partial involvement, words that didn't belong anywhere near my family. I stayed where I was, staring at my car like it might explain something. It didn't look different. Same scratches on the bumper, same dent near the trunk from 2 years ago. Nothing about it showed what had been done underneath. The mechanic walked back over, slower this time. You said the brakes went out while you were driving? Yeah, I said. Right after I left, I had to swerve off the road. He nodded, jaw tightening. You're lucky it happened there. Lucky? I repeated. If that line failed at speed highway, downhill, you wouldn't have had time to react. The words landed hard. Not dramatic, just factual. I swallowed, trying to steady my voice. Could it have snapped on its own? He shook his head immediately. No fraying, no corrosion. It's a clean cut. Whoever did it knew exactly where to go. Knew exactly where to go? I thought about Evan again, how casually he'd crouched down like he'd done it before. The way he hadn't rushed. The way he didn't explain. Officer Reyes came back, his tone firm now. We've asked your brother to come in voluntarily. If he doesn't, we'll escalate. Escalate how? I asked. He met my eyes. This isn't a prank, Lena. This is criminal. The word sat between us. Criminal. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Evan. It was my mom, I answered, putting it to my ear instead of speaker. What did you tell them? She demanded immediately. I told them what happened, I said. They found the brake line. It was cut. That's ridiculous, she snapped. Evan would never do something like that. You're making this worse than it is. My grip tightened. He just said it wasn't supposed to go that far. There was a pause, short but noticeable. Then, quieter. You know how he jokes. I looked up at my car again, suspended above me. This isn't a joke. Another silence. Then she said, Don't ruin your brother's life over a misunderstanding. The line went quiet. I lowered the phone slowly, something inside me settling into place. Not panic, not confusion. Clarity. Behind me, the mechanic spoke again, almost under his breath. I've seen accidents, he said. This wasn't one waiting to happen. It was made to happen. I turned toward him. Why would someone do that? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at the officers, then back at me. People usually have a reason, he said. And for the first time, that question felt more dangerous than the brakes failing ever had. Because I didn't have an answer, but someone else did. And they weren't here yet. They didn't bring Evan in that day. He didn't show up voluntarily. He didn't answer calls. By the time the officers left the shop, it had shifted from a conversation to something formal, something documented. And for the first time, no one was treating it like a misunderstanding. Later that afternoon, Officer Reyes called me back. His tone had changed, less questioning, more direct. We executed a warrant for your brother's phone records and search history, he said. There are some things you need to be aware of. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of coffee I hadn't touched. Okay, I said. There was a pause on the line, then he searched for ways to disable a vehicle's braking system. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. How long ago? I asked. Within the last 2 weeks. Multiple searches, specific methods. That cold feeling came back, but deeper this time. Structured, real. This wasn't impulsive, he added. It was planned. I closed my eyes briefly. The image of Evan under my car, calm, focused, snapped into place with something new behind it. I'm tense. Why? I asked quietly. Another pause. Papers shifting on his end. Financial records are still being reviewed, he said, but we've already identified significant debt tied to your brother. Loans, missed payments, and some overlap involving family accounts. I frowned. Overlap how? Accounts co-signed or connected, he said, including one tied to you. That made me sit up. What does that have to do with my car? We're still confirming, he said carefully, but there are scenarios where an accident involving you could have triggered financial relief or payouts directly or indirectly affecting those obligations. I didn't speak because I understood what he was saying. He hadn't just messed with my car. He'd calculated something. Are you saying he wanted me to crash? I asked. We're saying, Officer Reyes replied, that he knowingly created a situation where serious harm was likely. That was the line. Not emotional, not dramatic. Just clear, serious harm was likely. After the call ended, I sat there for a long time, replaying everything, not the accident, not the shop, but the driveway. The moment before I left, Evan leaning against the hood, arms crossed, watching me. Not laughing. Just watching. 2 days later, they brought him in. I wasn't there for the initial questioning, but I was called in after. The room was smaller than I expected. Cold, plain. Evan sat on one side of the table, shoulders tight, eyes avoiding mine. For the first time in my life, he didn't look confident. Lena, he said, like this was just another conversation. I didn't sit down right away. Why? I asked. No build-up, no anger in my voice, just the question that had been sitting there since the mechanic looked under my car. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his hands together. It wasn't supposed to be like that, he said. You already said that, I replied. That's not an answer. He glanced toward the officer in the room, then back at me. I just needed something to reset things, he said. The debt, the pressure, everything was stacking up. So you cut my brakes? I said. It wasn't like that, he said quickly. I looked it up. It said it could fail gradually, not completely. I thought it'd just scare you, maybe cause a minor accident. A minor accident? I cut in. He stopped. The room went quiet. You watched me drive away, I said, my voice steady now. You didn't say anything. He didn't respond. Did you even think about what could have happened? I asked. Another pause. Then, finally, I didn't think it would go that far. There it was again. Same sentence. Same distance from responsibility. I nodded once, more to myself than to him. That's the problem, I said. You didn't think. The charges came quickly after that. Tampering with a vehicle. Reckless endangerment. The investigation added weight, search history, tools, the precision of the cut, the financial motive. It wasn't treated as a prank. It wasn't treated as a mistake. It was treated as a decision. My parents tried to step in at first. Calls, messages, long explanations about stress and pressure and how Evan didn't mean it. But the evidence didn't leave room for that version anymore. Eventually, the calls stopped. Not because everything was resolved, but because there was nothing left to argue. The silence that replaced it was different from before. Heavier, more honest. A few weeks later, I went back to the shop. Same garage, same lift, same mechanic. My car was ready. He handed me the keys without much conversation, just a small nod, like we both understood something that didn't need to be said out loud. I walked around the car once before getting in. Nothing looked different, but everything felt different. I opened the door, sat down, and closed it slowly. For a second, I just sat there, hands resting on the wheel. Then I pressed the brake pedal. Firm. Immediate. Responsive. Exactly what it was supposed to be. I stayed there for a moment longer, letting that feeling settle, control, resistance, certainty. Something simple, something that had almost been taken away. I started the engine, pulled out of the lot, and eased onto the road. No hesitation this time. No second guessing. Just forward. And when I reached the end of the street, I pressed the brakes again. The car stopped exactly when I told it to. And this time, nothing about it felt uncertain.
So was it a prank or planned? Rewatch the driveway moment. You will catch it.